So, hey, how are you, John?
Well, the question is, how are you? I mean, what the fuck? What's
Yeah, what the
what?
fuck is the right way to phrase it? I'm good. We left Russia almost, how many days has it been? A little less than a week ago, last Wednesday on the 16th, we got on a plane, me, my fiance Karina, and our dog Leo. And now we're in Yerevan, Armenia. On the same day as we departed, Putin had this meeting with, I think it was the governors, I'm not sure, some group of his officials, but before they started the meeting, he delivered a speech in which he switched from talking about the external enemy, all these Nazis in Ukraine and American empire and whatnot, and he switched to talking about the internal enemy, and that sounded like that's us. He's talking about the fifth column, the people who may geographically be in Russia, but mentally they are there, mentally in their slavish consciousness. They will sell their own mother if only they are given a chance to sit in the hallway of the people who they consider to be the higher caste, the supreme race, which would be, I'm guessing, the Western culture, the Western people. Um, but he is confident that this is not going to be a problem because the Russian people will be able to differentiate between true patriots and the scum and what is the other word? Scum and traitors. We're national traitors. Um, and the Russian people are gonna spit us out like a midge that accidentally flew into their mouth. And this self purification of the nation is both natural and necessary, and that's what's gonna happen now. So
I heard that you posted an excerpt from that
mhm.
speech that had been translated, and yeah, it's really shocking. What's the situation for people? I mean, is Putin basically saying when people like you, lots of people are leaving now, is he saying good riddance? Is he trying to make it difficult for you to leave?
I think he is saying good riddance to the people who have left. I'm not sure whether it's gonna be easy to leave for the people who haven't left yet.
Hmm.
There, the situation is changing swiftly, and there are several forces at play. There's, Russians are sort of caught in between. Uh, somebody posted when the war just started. Somebody said it's a weird feeling. I feel like it's 1939 or something. I'm both a German and a Jew because you're both, you're in terms of people leaving Russia, one problem is maybe the Russian government is going to make it more difficult to leave. There have been We left without a lot of problems. Weren't like questioned at the airport or anything, but there have been a lot of people who were questioned by the FSB at the airports as they were trying to leave. They went through their phones. They looked at their private messages. They interrogated them. They asked them about the situation in Ukraine. They asked them whether they love Putin. Um,
Wow.
IT people are were the target then. Like most of the people who were detained are people who, at the initial, like the questions that just the customs officer asked them when they were asked, what do you do? If you said IT, you had a very high chance of being escorted to a different room and being questioned by different people.
Huh.
Uh, and there, this is interesting. At the time, I was trying to figure out why this was happening, like what are they trying to do? And there was one particular report. of a person, a girl who was questioned like this, that sounded eliminating. She said that, she was brought into a different room and there were people from the FSB and they were asking her questions. And one of the questions they asked was, why are so many IT people are leaving the country right now? And she said, well, because we can work from anywhere and it's going to be harder to work here. Russians can't receive money from abroad anymore. That is still a problem for me. I'm not in Russia, but I don't know how to get paid for now. And, the sanctions, the economy is going to tank, all of these things. So for an IT person, it makes sense to leave and find a different place to work. And this woman who reported this being questioned, she said that when she said that to the FSB person, they were grateful. They were like, oh, finally, somebody is telling us how it is. And to her, it seemed that they were genuinely confused. They're like, all of these IT people are leaving. And I think my sense is they're seeing the IT guys as a resource, almost like something similar to like a person with military training leaving the country.
Right.
Because there is a cyber dimension to politics and to war these days. And people who are in IT can be an asset for other governments or other forces. And I think they, on the one hand, they don't want these people to leave because they might use them. The Russian government wants that resource on their soil. And then they also don't want other forces to use them.
That makes sense, actually. Are you
I'm
an IT person, kind of? I mean, you're
No,
in the
I-
communication business.
Yeah, I maintain that I am not. This was like when we were about to leave, we had to purge our phones from, like we went through opened the Telegram chat app and we searched through the entire history. We used the words Putin, Ukraine, or Navalny, and we deleted everything. We left some group chats to re-enter them later. And one of the questions was, if they do ask me, what do you do? What the fuck do I respond? Because if you say anything involving like there's a computer involved, that's a flag. So my plan, I was not asked that question. We left without any question. And really, I was only asked, what is the purpose of your visit? And I said tourism, and that was fine. But we were preparing, and I decided that I would say that I'm an illustrator, which is not a lie.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a programmer or anything. But anyway, just today, Karina, my fiance, told me that we haven't checked, but her mom forwarded some message to her saying that they have now paused issuing new passports in Russia. So in Russia, there are two different passports. There's a passport that you have as a citizen for travel within the country and for everything, just your like national ID. And then if you want to go abroad, you have to have a different foreign passport or abroad passport, whatever that's called. So apparently, I don't know if it's a rumor or a fact. I haven't had the time to check, but they're saying that you are not going to be able to get that kind of passport started now for some period of time. I don't know if that's the case. It might be. There have been many rumors about, a martial law or men being prohibited from leaving because it looks like what they call a special operation, what everybody else is calling a war, is not going according to the plan. I think they thought it would be over by now, and it's not. And so they're going to need more people to fight it.
Well, hey, I just have two questions to get out of the way. One, FSB, is that the equivalent of the KGB or is just generic security services?
Basically. Yeah. It's the
And wh
successor.
and what does your, fiancé do, if I may be so nosy?
She works at the charity foundation. She just switched from one to another. She started just when we started dating. She left her long-time job and paused for a while and tried to figure out what she wants to do with her life really,
Mm.
and decided that she wants to, just do good, just help people in need. And so for a while, she worked at a foundation that helped children, orphans, and children with disabilities. And then she switched from that to a different place that helps animals, dogs and cats, which is really her true passion. She feels better about animals than about humans.
Yeah,
Um,
um,
so she works remotely. The job is in Russia, which is good because that money we actually can get for now. And here in Armenia, we can use a Russian card to pay for things.
what what's
Um,
what's I mean, I'm if you just wanna sort of keep telling us what's going on, that would be great, but I just have a few questions. Like,
no, go ahead, of
what
course.
what's Armenia like? I know nothing about Armenia. Was Armenia
This is my
a satellite of the Soviet Union previously?
right. It was one of the republics.
Mhm.
This is my first time here, and I don't know honestly much about the country. It's very nice. We haven't seen anything but friendliness from the people. Almost everybody speaks Russian. They say that part of the reason they are so welcoming, apart from just ties to Russia. There are a lot of Armenians in Russia. There used to be some number of Russians in Armenia. Now it's over the top. It's overrun with these Russians escaping the regime.
Hmm.
But they say that part of the reason they're so welcoming is they have had, it's not over still. They have a military conflict that's most of the time in a kind of a cold phase with Azerbaijan, a neighboring country. But every once and again, there's a flare up, and there was one last year, I think. And I think I might be wrong about this. I'm not that educated in this, but my understanding is one part of it is Russia did play a role there as a sort of a peacekeeper between the two countries, trying to bring the ceasefire closer. Um, and then the other part, which might be more important, is just that they know what a war is, and that war was not with Russia,
Right.
right? So they just know that people get displaced. People sometimes need to be on the move and find a different place to find shelter. But I don't know, I haven't like spoken about all of this to an Armenian.
Is Armenia a
uh,
democracy?
they just, yeah, I don't know, again, don't know enough about, on paper Russia is a democracy, but
Right.
that's
Yeah.
I think my guess is they're closer to the actual meaning of that word, but I don't really know a lot. They just had a new president inaugurated, but that's the extent that I know about this. So we need to do some catching up and reading some Wikipedia. One of the first things we saw when we entered the city on our way from the airport to the city, there was a big billboard with Biden, and it said, "Thank you, Joseph Biden, for recognizing the Armenian genocide."
Huh.
There is this. I don't know how well recognized in the world it is, like on the official level, and I think that's a big pain for Armenians that it's not recognized. But there was a period in the history of the country where the Turkey like slaughtered, I don't know the numbers, but a whole lot of Armenians.
Right.
I think there are more Armenians outside of Armenia than inside. The population of the country is only 3 million, I think, and one of those millions is in Yerevan, the city where we're in. This is the biggest
Hmm.
city.
Um, I just wanna go back to that comment you said before about feeling as though you're both Jewish and German in 1939.
Mm.
What are your how are you feeling about Russia now? I mean, are you sad that you had to leave? Do you hope you can go back? Do you feel like you've left forever?
Um, I don't know about the forever part because there's no long-term planning on our part right now. And who knows what's going to happen? Maybe the regime ends. Maybe the country falls apart. Maybe in a few years there's no Russia to come back to. There's a different, there's a number of different states. I don't know. The way I feel about this is complex, and it's an ongoing conversation within my own mind and between all the Russians that I know. There's an op-ed that was published in the New York Times recently by a Russian journalist, Ilya Krasильщик. And the title goes something like, Russians have failed as a nation.
I read that.
And it caused some controversy because some Russians were offended by it. Karina is a big fan of Krasильщик. He's doing interesting things and important things. One of the things he's doing is he's publishing anonymous letters from people working in the government. Like, what is your perspective? People who went to the rally where Putin was talking about, the thing he talks about. But so in that article, he is saying, listen, it's not that we all are evil. It's not that we're all individually to blame. There are a lot of people who have done everything that they could to fight the regime, to make Russia a better place, to fight for democracy in Russia. There are a lot of people who maybe weren't involved in political action, but they were still doing important jobs and, helped people around them. And that's all good. But we have to admit that as far as building a better country, as far as stopping the creep of fascism, we did not succeed. If we do think of ourselves in terms of, it's a collective enterprise. There's a nation that can have successes and failures. Well, this is the bottom. Or maybe you can go further than that, further down than that. But we failed.
Yeah.
And we need to take on this responsibility. If we don't acknowledge that we failed, then we're not gonna improve. Then there's no chance of an improvement down the road. And some people were offended by this. There was a response by some woman who works in charity, and she said, I don't understand why this one person is speaking on behalf of a nation. I don't understand how he can say that, like, I failed. I'm doing an important job. I'm helping people, and it's hard. It's already hard to do this in Russia, and this feels like I'm being kicked by somebody that I didn't expect to kick me. Like, you're supposed to be on my side, and then here you are blaming me for something that I have nothing to do with. And then she talks about her parents, who are Russians, who live in the US, and they're scientists, and they make medicine, and noble people doing good in the world. How have they failed?
Yeah.
And I think she misses the point. I don't think she understands. Well, you ask me about my feelings. My feelings are, one position you could take is, I am not responsible for the actions of this government that I didn't elect, that I tried to fight but failed. I am not responsible for the actions even of, or like the behavior of my countrymen. There are Russians who support this shit. There are Russians who put this Z, which is the symbol. It originated, it's a mark that they put on Russian military vehicles in Ukraine, and then it became this symbol that people in support of the war and the regime are putting on the rear windows of their cars, and the government is putting it on billboards. And before we left, we went to a place to get some documentation. There the cashier is sitting behind a glass, and on the glass there's this Z.
Yeah.
Which, man, it looks like a swastika to me. It's so bizarre. Like these like seemingly unconscious, subconscious kind of choices, aesthetic choices that they have. Like that letter is not in the Russian alphabet.
Huh.
It's a weird choice for that letter to be your symbol. And there's another V is another one that's also the same origin story. It's on I think there's no clarity, at least I haven't seen a definitive answer as to what they meant. It may be that Z stands for Zapad, west, and V for Vostok, east. So these are directions for the different troops in Ukraine. But it's some kind of a military practical kind of thing there. But then these two letters, neither of them is in the Russian alphabet.
Yeah.
Both of them have these like angles. There's, the Z, I've seen a few comparisons that are like a few uses. It's featured. It's a logo of a few of the Nazi German, from the Second World War thing. So it just on a kind of subconscious level, it just looks like a swastika to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's there. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. What I was saying is there are people in Russia who support this. How should we feel about them? Am I responsible in some part for that? Because that's my people doing this thing. And my feeling is you can go one of two routes here. One is to say, I am only responsible for my own actions. I'm a human being. I'm not a Russian or a man or this or that. I'm my own person, and you can judge me for what I do. And which is, I can understand that. I would not judge somebody for taking this position. I get it. But if that's the position you take, then you definitely should not be offended by that journalist saying Russians failed as a nation. Well, if you're not thinking of yourself in those terms as you're a part of a nation, then it doesn't concern you. You're your own person, and everything else is, what's not in front of you is not your part of the world. And then if you do think of yourself as a part of a nation, if you do have a sense of belonging, then I think we have to take this responsibility. What that means exactly, I think that's the task in front of us. That's pretty urgent and huge, and it's not going to be solved tomorrow. But we need to figure out the causes of what's happening. And it's not only the war in Ukraine, it's also, the nature of the regime that has established itself in Russia. It didn't start yesterday. It didn't start with this war. This is just the most horrific expression of it to date.
Yeah.
But it's been here, and it's been, this to me feels like Stalin light, sort of. It's very similar, like the Putin's and Stalin's kind of psychological portrait and background and methods are very similar to me. That Putin is, at least now, as of now, is not as ruthless, but it's the same kind of strain in the country's history. And we need to. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Do you know this potential for tension between, there's how we approach something like this intellectually and rationally, and then there are emotions that are tugging us. It's almost like a member of your family, your brother or your sister turns out to be a terrible
Mhm.
person and commits a crime. Um, what do you do in a situation like that? Where do your loyalties lie toward, I don't know, society and humanity or toward this blood relative? And so here's a question. Do you know anybody? So you've got all these people in Russia. Are any of them sort of grudgingly supporting the war and supporting Putin because they think that's the patriotic thing to do?
Nobody in my direct circle of contacts. Um, I know that my aunt, who I know but don't really have a relationship with, she's in Siberia. She supports the war. And then I think among like my contacts, that's the only person. But then I know that there's one friend that has had a hard time with her parents, or actually a couple of friends who find themselves on the other part of the divide as opposed to their parents. So, and then you do just see people in, as I said, like you're in a car and you see a BMW of all cars with that Z in the rear window. So those people that are then on social media, you see both sides. It's hard to say the sort of the breakdown, like what percentage are in support, what percentage isn't. There's also, and I understand there's like all of we're in a bubble and it's hard to, you need to really talk to people to understand their perspective and whatnot. But I don't think I've seen even a single articulate defense of Russian actions, which is not to say that you can't give one. I could lay it out, but when it comes, like when I see people arguing about this, I see a fair amount of reflection and just like coherent speech on the side of anti-war side. And then most of what I see on the other one is rarely like, a position that you can see that this person understands why they believe what they believe, and here's the explanation. It's more just an explosion of emotions against the traitors or the evil West or whatever, the Nazis in Ukraine, all of that kind of stuff.
So they believe what Putin,
and I
they
think,
believe how Putin is framing this, and they believe what he's saying about people like you who criticize the war and are ashamed, not to put emotions in your head,
yeah,
but who are ashamed of or expressing shame about what their country is doing.
Yeah, at least they're saying these things. Again, the problem here, I mean, I don't want to sound like, oh, these people are dumb. Though if I'm totally honest, that's kind of how it feels. But I think this is a consequence of a long-term strategy. So the TV has been under the control of the government for a long time, and the TV, when I visit my family, I see what's there, or when we visit Karina's grandma, we see what's there. It's chaos. It's yelling. It's incoherent. It's not. They don't have some kind of a positive vision laid out. Again, you could imagine that. I could write a defense of the state. I can talk about the NATO bases in Europe. I can talk about whatever Russian history, and Russia is supposed to be an empire and this and that. But very rarely you see a kind of calm explanation of here's where we stand and here's why we need to do this or that. More than that, you see just a mosaic, a lot of things thrown in that don't fit together, but it doesn't matter if they fit together. What matters is the emotional message behind it. The emotional message behind it is we are in the right. We are surrounded by enemies. If anything goes wrong here, it's somebody else's fault, and we need to fight back.
How does it compare to, you've had a pretty good perspective on the polarization in the U.S. over the last, it's been there practically forever, but it's become intensified in the Trump era. And, the Republicans and Democrats now almost see each other as, each sees the other side as anti-American. And there's very little, to me, rational debate. Moderates generally get shouted down, people who try to build bridges. Is it like that? So do people like you, here's one of the things that bothered me about the left under Trump. I felt like the left hated Trump so much and hated the Republicans so much that the left became somewhat irrational and started criticizing Republican or Trump positions just because they were Republican or Trump positions, rather than actually analyzing them rationally. Has it reached that point with the?
Well, it's further than that. We've gone further than that. So there's a fundamental difference because you guys have two sides that are fighting. We have one side that is in power, and I'm pretty sure that, again, this is a subjective thing, and I don't want to sound arrogant about the other side, but I'm pretty sure that a large portion of the vocal supporters of this regime would quickly become the supporters of whatever regime that comes next, if that happens. I think this is again, from the way they speak about this, and from when you try to engage in conversation, you try, like Karina tried this early on. She was so frustrated with the people who she couldn't understand. How can you support the destruction of cities, the bombing of civilians in a country like we're relatives? I mean, like relatives in the literal sense, not just like, well, Russians and Ukrainians are peoples that are together. No, there's like, my mother has an aunt that's in Ukraine. I have a friend who eventually left. She was in Kyiv when the war started and stayed there for a few weeks and then left. Karina's stepdad's dad has his mother in Ukraine. This is not uncommon. My mom is from Ukraine. There are familial ties, and you're just killing civilians. So she tried to took some strength on her part to like not phrase it as what the fuck are you thinking, and she really tried to ask people, well, okay, so there are Nazis in Ukraine and we need to liberate. All right, why then are all independent media is now banned in Russia? Like, why, if we're the good side and if we're doing the good thing, why is talking about it prohibited? And she didn't get much in terms of, well, here's why. She got, just shut up. Why are you trying to put your opinion onto others, kind of thing. I'm not forgetting what questions I'm trying to answer. The polarization in Russia. Yeah, so the fundamental difference is there's I think the majority of the people who are on the side of the regime are people who are on the side of whoever is in power. I think that's the real stance. I think we've been talking about this. One way I thought about this is my perception of the problem. And there's like a spectrum. You can talk about the everyday people, you can talk about people close to Putin, you can talk about Putin himself, you can talk about the sort of the political elite, the people who work on TV, the propagandists. Many of them, the people high up, they don't believe what they're saying because they have property in Western countries. This is where they go to have a good time. They have children who study in British schools. They are rich and travel, and they like to spend their time in the depraved West, as they would describe it when talking to the population here. And so, partly because of this hypocrisy that's pretty obvious, and partly because of the way they articulate their positions, they change the position when the zeitgeist changes. They don't have a problem with contradicting themselves. And they try really hard to just stay in a safe spot, in a comfortable place. So because of all of that, I see the problem as not so much a presence of evil, like, Hitler had a vision. He was on behalf of something. There was a presence of evil. Here, I see an absence of integrity, an absence of an articulated position for yourself, even. I think a lot of people who are doubling down now, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. Like, so for years, you've been working, let's say, at the first channel in Russia, the biggest, or even worse, at the second channel, at the biggest propaganda machines. And for years, you could have been telling yourself, this is all good, Yeah, I'm not some kind of truth teller, but the country needs cohesion, that this needs to be done. Or even maybe you're not telling yourself that the country needs cohesion. You have a job. It's a good job. You're a good professional, and you produce what needs to be produced. Many people have jobs that they're not particularly excited about, but you just do it.
You're taking care of
but you're
taking care of your family.
That's right. But you're probably telling yourself that you're not evil, right? You're saying this is okay. So if you've been doing that for many, many years, where do you draw the line? Like, if you draw the line here at this war, you're seeing the devastation in Ukraine, and you're saying, okay, so this is evil. I'm not going to be a part of this. What do you tell yourself about the last however many years? Because this is not in contradiction to what's been happening. So I see it as there are, Putin personally, well, I actually don't even know what his psychology is. It's hard to say, but maybe we can label him as evil if that makes us feel better. But I think if we're trying to solve the problem, the root causes of it, I don't think it's just Putin. And I don't think that if this particular guy wasn't at a particular place at a particular time, we would just be fine. I think the chances of somebody like Putin coming to power were high before he came to power, and maybe if it wasn't for him, it would have been somebody else. And so, if we're trying to analyze the root causes and trying to solve this problem and try to make it so that this doesn't repeat itself, then we need to look at the larger dynamic. And I think one of the big things there is there are a lot of people who are not trying to make the right choices, to figure out what they believe and stand for those beliefs, who will just side with the powerful. And then there are other people who are principled and whatnot, but they have their own problems. Maybe they can't organize very well. Maybe, there are a lot of analysis that needs to be done. Yeah. But one key thing there that I'm gonna keep thinking about is this issue of the absence of a position, an articulate, an understanding of what it is you actually are on behalf on, regardless of who's in power.
All I can do is sort of try to put myself in the shoes of somebody who is doing pretty well under this regime with all its flaws, that, you're taking care of yourself and you're taking care of people in your family. And so do you risk all that when your protest might have no effect? You just end up in jail, you lose your job, your life collapses. Maybe you're even killed if you're involved in a protest that becomes violent. It seems to me the only way you can justify not speaking out and protesting sort of intellectually is if you think maybe you're frightened of democracy. You think Russia is not ready for democracy. It really doesn't have this tradition. And you're frightened by what happened after the fall of the Soviet Union. You saw all this chaos. And so you think Putin is somebody, for all his flaws, who is a strong leader and binds the country together and protects us from outside forces. The problem with that now is that it seems that his strength has become a liability. In other words, his idea of strength means beating the shit out of Ukraine, bombing it. The world is against him and Russia now. And so Russia is in chaos. Here's the guy who promised us security and stability, and we don't have that now. So, I mean, if I'm trying to be hopeful, I would think maybe that the people who actually are benefiting from Putin are thinking now, wow, this is like not good. We've got to do something about this guy. He's endangering our prosperity and our security. Do you think there's any possibility that will
I
happen?
think so. It depends on which group of people we're talking about. If we're talking about these like well-off business people who have been benefiting from the regime, working with the regime, etc., I'm pretty sure that's what they're thinking now. Yeah, but do they have? If they tried to do something about this, if they tried to bring an end to this regime, do they have what it takes? And then maybe more importantly, the thing I've been talking about just now, these people have been here for a long time and they've been doing these compromises. That means that the person in this position is not likely to be taking risks. There must be a way in the risks, right? What is more risky, to go against this regime that can put you in jail, that can murder you, that can do a whole lot of things to you, or to not do that and face the consequences that the country is facing now with all these sanctions. If you're a businessman with all of these connections in Western countries, how do you continue? Do you switch to China somehow? So they must be weighing the risks, but I don't know what can they do, and I don't know if they are the kinds of people who would try to do
To
something.
what extent are people even able to discuss these issues in Russia now? To what extent? I mean, the New York Times and other places that I'm reading is talking about this censorship that's been imposed. So you were there just recently. Were you getting information from the West? Were you able to see what was going on, or were you part of any kinds of I mean,
I didn't really even. I think I paid less attention to Western sources than I normally do during this time, just because it's so. Normally I browse the internet, I look at things when I want to look at things. These weeks, it's just constant updating of the feed, and I had some sources, uh, Russian sources that I looked at, and those are all banned now. But with VPN, you can access them. So
what's
if
that?
you're a little tech savvy, so it's an app that allows you to pretend that you're not in Russia. Your IP address is masked, and you go through a different computer that's in some other country, and so you can access the sites that are banned within the country. That's been like, I've had VPN for a long time before this started, because every once in a while you need to go and see something that's not allowed. But so it's there if you
Right.
seek it out, if you take extra steps. But even before those sites were banned, they had an audience that were going to those sites. There are some other examples. Like, there's a guy who does interviews on YouTube who's very popular. And when the war started, his name is Yuri Dudь, and he did an interview with a writer, Boris Akunin. When the war started, they talked for an hour or 2 hours about this, and that interview has more than 20 million views, I think, now. And Russia is a country of 140 million people. So there are some, a handful, really. Maybe it's not one guy, if I'm honest, who have a large audience, who are independent and talk about things in a way that is not the way the regime would want you to. They might ban YouTube. It's very likely, actually, that they do. And if that happens, more people will learn what VPN is. But I think also a lot of people are gonna stop using YouTube, and they're gonna create some. They already have a Russian equivalent, and they're gonna put their
How about
chips into that. Maybe.
How about just ordinary conversations? Can people? I mean,
that's up to you, isn't it? That's the choices you make. What do you talk about? Do you have an uncomfortable conversation or not? Karina and I had a weird fucking conversation. I think the first. So when the war started, it's all a blur now. All these days are like a bad dream. But for a while, it's like we're talking to each other. Karina would go to the office at work every day, and on day 4 or something, she sort of exploded because everybody's just doing their thing. Just, it's a job and you're doing your work. And after a few days, she couldn't stand that, and she like exploded and started talking, why are you silent? What do we, let's talk about this. And the response she got from one of the girls working there is like, well, I've been drinking since morning. She has this cup that's supposed to be tea or coffee, but she's pouring cognac into it. But then we had, so like one of the first conversations with somebody who's not a close friend about this in real life was at a bar. We're sitting at this bar, and there's a guy that we've seen at this place a few times before, and it's probably past midnight. And I think he's trying to flirt with some girl. He's ordering whiskey to some girl sitting at a different table. And we cross our eyes, and he starts talking about whiskey. I've seen you guys before. Do you come here often? And so we start chatting. And then we start talking about what's happening. And he was nice. And the conversation was respectful. And he was actually an example of somebody on the other side who can listen and can articulate his position. Not that his position makes a lot of sense to me, but it makes sense to him, and that's already a lot. He's thought about it. But he was, so there's this organization, I haven't heard about them in a while, but in like 2012, 2013, they were kind of prominent. NOD, Национальное освободительное движение, the National Liberation Movement. Those are the people, they had these flags, the black and orange, part of the Second World War, the Patriotic War symbolism that they appropriated. And I remember picking a newspaper of theirs when they were handing out these newspapers 10 years ago. And I was kind of blown away because their position as laid out in that newspaper was that the entire system that we have in Russia is a system that was created by the West. We are like the colony, we lost the Cold War, and the victorious side imposed its system on us, and we are basically controlled by the United States. But within that system, there's one rogue warrior, and that's Putin. So the way they present it is he's not the architect of the system, and he's not even really the guy who rules it. He's this like lone, KGB agent trying to navigate within a system that was built from the foundation by the West.
Wow.
I've gotten actually pretty good at, entertaining wacky worldviews, and I can sort of see how it makes sense now. I mean, I think I've told you last time we talked about this, the Russian Constitution that was signed in 1993. The U.S. played a part in drafting that Constitution, and Russia was a capitalist country, and you could say maybe a democratic country in the 90s. Putin is from KGB, and he got into, it's not like he was really elected. He was first appointed, and then in a few months there was an election. And so I can see how you can, that's not my worldview, but I can, okay. But so he said, we're talking about this, and he said, I'm from this, a part of this organization, maybe you've heard about it, it's called NOD. And I started laughing. I'm like, oh shit, okay. I know how this conversation, let's talk. I'm curious, what do you think about this? And he was open to me laughing. He understood that it's a little like saying you're a Scientologist or something. But we had a good conversation. We disagreed about everything, but we were able to do that respectfully. And then I remember a couple of days later, I was falling asleep, and I'm thinking, maybe he's an FSB agent. Maybe I'm just so naive. This nice guy's just talking to you at a bar about the war for no reason. And that would be, I guess, paranoia coming in. But then, those FSB people
Except if
could be doing something.
I think a spy would pretend to be sympathetic toward your position to see if he can draw you out and get you to say really radical things. That would be.
Well, he was like, yeah, I understand. He was understanding, and as I said, he was like exceptionally kind and gracious. Like usually, like he didn't
Right.
say, "Oh, you're traitors." And I told him I work with Americans. One of my problems is I can get paid now because he's like, "Well, yeah, wartime rules." Well, actually, on that part, he said that's not really the fault of our government, is it? Because the reason you can get paid by Americans is the American sanctions against Russia, not the other way around, which is true. But anyway, there is going to be a lot of, if we are to get through this, if we survive as a nation and there's some kind of constructive anything, there would need to be a whole lot of difficult conversations and reckoning and figuring out what responsibility each of us bears and how, like, what it means to bear that responsibility, apart from saying, yes, I feel ashamed or whatever. That's not really about shame, is it? It's about doing something to make things better. There's a chance. I think we have a shot. I think this whole, I'm a part of this wave of political immigration or exile or whatever you want to call it. That is interesting. You have people who, a lot of them are talented, a lot of them have skills. They self-selected. Those are the people who couldn't stand the regime and try to leave. They're appalled by the war. They could become just immigrants doing their own thing, but they could become a community. They could become a society. They could take on this responsibility and turn that into some kind of action, help each other, help people back home, send money or goods to Russians and Ukrainians, try to figure out if there is a political action that can be taken. There can be a new identity forged. Have you seen this new flag that the protest movement, the anti-war movement is sort of starting to adopt? I like it. It's the same as the Russian flag, except that the red stripe is erased and it's white instead of red. So the symbolism is we don't want the blood, we don't want the militarism, the war, the aggression of it all. We want to purify ourselves and be a peaceful nation. And there are other. It makes sense on a number of levels. It's similar to the flag of Novgorod, which is the birthplace of Russian democracy. There was a time when this particular region actually had, like many centuries ago, had a system like a direct democracy where people would gather in the square. So there is a symbol that's being tried out. And so maybe we managed to make something with it. Maybe we managed to become, I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but it sort of feels this way. Maybe we can manage to become a nation, because I don't know if we are one now. There is a people, but I don't think Russians are making choices. I don't think Russians have been making choices or have been even understanding what choices they would make if they were able to. I think we have been just going along and have been just trying to do our thing and hoping that the wrath of the regime is not going to fall on us. And that's not a nation. That's not there's no agency here. There's no collective agency or collective responsibility. And so if we want to be something more than that, there's a lot of work to do.
That's pretty sobering. I guess there does seem to be a kind of fatalistic streak in Russians about it's just not worth trying to make things better because it's not going to work. So just hunker down and take care of yourself and your loved ones.
Yeah, there's that. And then we met up with one of the people here. We haven't really interacted with this. I don't know if it's a community yet, but there's a lot of Russians here in Yerevan, and we met with one, a friend of a friend who needed antidepressants because of all this. So we brought some antidepressants to her from Russia, and she felt her feeling was sort of being stabbed in the back by the country. She felt like this is like my mother decided to give me to a foster home. She, her grievance was, I have not been fatalistic. I have been trying to do good things, and there are a lot of people that have been trying to do the same. We build businesses, there's charity, there's all kinds of talented people doing things, trying and actually succeeding against the odds, and then the country just tells you, we don't need your kind here, or worse, right? Or your kind is going to go to a special place with bars. So I don't know. There are people who have been trying to do this or that. I agree with Krasильchik, who wrote in the New York Times that we have failed. And so if we want to try again, we need to reconsider our approaches and figure out what we've been doing wrong and what skills we need to develop. And one of them is talking, I think.
Yeah, I've got to break for my for lunch now, but I'll talk to you anytime. I mean,
Yeah, let's talk. I want to do more now. I want to write more and talk more, and there's now an urgency that I feel towards everything that I do. Not that I think that that this particular conversation is extremely important, and now I'm gonna build a nation, but I need to be trying to do something, and talking and writing and drawing and coming up with ideas is what I do. So
I feel fortunate
to
be able to talk to you, because I mean, I, like everybody else over here, wonders what the hell is going on over there. So it's great to be able to talk to somebody who's in the middle of it. So yeah.
Let's talk more.
Okay, Nikita. Yeah. Stay safe.
Okay, thanks, John. Let's talk soon.
Where is the line between dreaming and feeling blue? It's 4:00 in the evening. I haven't left my room, but the truth is, if I'm honest, I feel stuck here in the middle. Am I one of those crazy people? Should I stay here or should I let go? Pull the sheets over my head, hoping change is gonna find me. You don't have to remind me. I'm doing nothing at all. I'm ruminating on a blank wall, but I feel stuck here in the middle. Am I one of those crazy people? Should I stay was crazy.